This article being featured here was written on November 7, 1967. It was written by Jerry Levine and is being assumed that the article was written to be featured in the Daily Iowa newspaper. The title of this article is 17 Protesters Convicted, and the focus of the article is on how the protesters were arrested, their pleas being refused, their jail term, and the fines that were due to the protesters against the war. The author, Jerry Levine, was a very informational journalist and leaves a lot up to his readers to decide. He shares all of the important information with the reader throughout the article and allows for the reader to choose whether he is pro-war or anti-war. Jerry Levine wrote his article using a very monotone voice. He worked for a popular newspaper company, and his job wasn't to form an opinion about a topic. His job was to report the truth about events so the public could have a better understanding of the events going on around their homes. One example from the newspaper article is the first sentence of the last paragraph. He presents facts straightforward, like saying, the 17 persons who were found guilty were part of a group of demonstrators who attempted to block the entrance of the Union to stop persons from seeing the Marine recruiters last Wednesday as a protest of the Vietnamese War. This portrays that the protesters were negative, saying that they were attempting to block the entrance of the Union. The article says many similar things showing the protesters in a negative light. This document was created to inform local people of Iowa City, Iowa. The author is local because he is a journalist writing for the Daily Iowa newspaper. More people were probably at the protest or riots and could attest to his article. It is hard to know whether Jerry Levine was actually there at the riots or if he was just getting his information about the protest from a colleague or another outside source. Some people may agree with him saying the protests were negative, or some people could oppose his views and fully support the anti-war protest about the Vietnam War. Using secondary sources, it is obvious that people who were anti-war were extremely hated against. Their patriotism was questioned instantly, and the protesters answered back with chants filled with foul language, which angered many bystanders. Protesters during this time were often extremely vocal and used signs to get their messages across. The protesters were very smart people. They used different signs and wrote different sayings or phrases on the banners because they knew newspaper photographers would be at these riots and war events. The newspaper photographer would obviously take pictures at the events, and the signs would more likely than not be in the backgrounds of the photos as well. In addition to the photos being taken, newspaper journalists would also have a video crew getting footage for the evening news later that day. All of the riots were being filmed, and then every TV set in America would be watching the riots that following night. The whole world is watching was how the Vietnamese War protests were received. This newspaper article by Jerry Levine gives subtle insight to all of the details that were happening during this wartime. He gives factual information about one specific anti-war protest going on in the heart of Iowa City on the University of Iowa's college campus. However, the reality is that riots similar to this one were happening nationwide, because when a country is at war, all of the people who live there are affected as well.